Hello and welcome, my budding theologians. It's great to have you here. This is part 2 of the big question: did Jesus break the Sabbath? That's a good question, isn't it? It's very important. It's a very important question. And so, if you have not seen part 1, make sure you skedaddle, get on back over there, watch part 1, and then I'll be right here waiting for you. I'll be right here waiting. And come on back over. Did Jesus break the Sabbath? Part 2. That's where we're at right now. Okay? My name is Joel Willoughby, founder of Brains and Bibles. It's a fresh little nonprofit, and I am here to deliver high-quality theology around the world to anyone that wants it for the glory of God. And if you want to take a part in that, I would love to let you do that. Consider making a donation to Brains and Bibles. Electronic giving is on its way, but it's not here yet. So if you'd like to make a donation, you'll have to write a check. I'd love for you to do that. I'll give you the address now and then give it to you at the end of the video as well. So you can do that. You'll have to address the checks to Brains and Bibles, but the address is Ankeny Baptist Church, 2842 Southwest 3rd Street Place, Ankeny, Iowa, 50023. Now, before we dig back into the lesson, part 2, did Jesus break the Sabbath? Okay, before we dig back into that lesson, I just want to give a big thank you to the Brains and Bibles community. And there's a Facebook page, there's the YouTube channel here, there's an Instagram account, there's LinkedIn with my name, Joel Willoughby, not Brains and Bibles, but Joel Willoughby. You can check that out. If you have not followed any of that, I would invite you to do that. You can subscribe right here to the channel, right there. I think it's in one of those places. Okay, I'm not up on that yet. All right, but it's somewhere right in there. Subscribe to the channel. Ring that notification bell so you'll know exactly when videos come. Go ahead and go to the Facebook page, like that, follow it, so you can get even more information. There's some bonus content there, and so you might really appreciate that. I think you will. Okay, now, without any further delay, here we go. Part 2, did Jesus break the Sabbath? Let's jump right back in. Okay, last time we focused on John chapter 5. Now we're going to Matthew chapter 12. So get out that Bible. I usually go to the ESV, English Standard Version, but you can use whatever you want. It's all good. It's all good. It's the Word of God. So let's turn our attention to Matthew 12. Now there's 2 events in this one chapter, not even the whole chapter, just the very beginning of it. We're going to start in verse 1. There's 2 events we're going to go through. The second one won't take long at all. It's pretty much all the attention is going to be on this first event because the second event is much like what you already heard about in part 1, okay? Let's get into it. Verses 1 and 2. This is what the Bible says. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry, and they began to pluck heads of grain and to eat. But when the Pharisees saw it, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath." And they're just breaking down. Actually, what it was, they said, "Ha, we got him now. We have him now." But no, that's not the case at all, right? Right? Or maybe it is. Let's check it out. Okay, so that's verses 1 and 2. All right, so you're thinking, busted. Oh, no. What will Jesus do? His disciples, these lowly disciples, they've blundered again. Now Jesus has to pick up all the pieces. Or did the Pharisees blunder? All right, we're going to find out. I like the word blunder. Do you like that word? I love that word blunder. It just sounds cool. There's certain words you just like them, right? I don't know. So Jesus immediately makes a defense here. Immediately makes a defense of his disciples against the hypocritical Pharisees. Jesus actually delivers 2 proofs in rapid fire. Are you ready for this? Hold on to your theological seats. Are you ready for this? Jesus gives 2 defenses in rapid fire for his lowly disciples. Okay, are you ready? We're ready. Let's read a little bit more into Matthew 12. Now we're going to look at verses 3 and 4. He said to them, "Have you not read?" What an insult, right? Most of these Pharisees had most of the Old Testament memorized. And he says, "Have you not read what David did when he was hungry?" Wait a minute. David was hungry too? Now, they have a hard time with this one because Abraham, Moses, David, guys like that, they were the all-stars of the Jewish community, and they are really awesome. They are really awesome. But here's the deal. The Pharisees, they would never condemn any of those guys. And here Jesus mentions David. They're not going to condemn David. So he says, "Wait, have you not read about David?" What a slap in the face. Because they're thinking, of course we've read about David. We know all about David. He's one of our heroes, right? Okay. So he says, David, I'll just start over. He said to them, "Have you not read what David did when he was hungry, and those who were with him, how he entered the house of God and ate the bread of the presence, which it was not lawful for him to eat, nor for those who were with him, but only for the priests. So Jesus is saying, hey, look, it was not okay for David to do this, but he did it, and you're not talking bad about him, so I can talk bad about the disciples. That's the short summary, but let me explain that a little more. So you might not be familiar, so let's go back to the law. What was okay, what was not okay. Let's go back to the law. We're going to look at two different passages, only 3 verses, not a big deal. Let's first consider Deuteronomy 23, 24, and 25, okay? So just a quick little summary of it. They were not allowed to harvest the grain with a sickle, but they could take with their hands what they were going to immediately consume. So hand to mouth, all right? Now, they couldn't be shoving stuff in a bag or anything. They couldn't be grabbing a sickle and harvesting massive amounts, none of that kind of stuff. But they could just, whatever they could grab their hand and eat, that was okay. Let's read it. Deuteronomy 23, 24, and 25. If you go into your neighbor's vineyard, you may eat your fill of grapes. That sounds like a good day. As many as you wish. Grapes. Have you ever had cotton candy grapes? Those are amazing. But you shall not put any in your bag. I don't think they had cotton candy grapes in Israel, though. All right, let's stay focused. If you go into your neighbor's standing grain, you may pluck the ears with your hand. But you shall not put a sickle to your neighbor's standing grain, okay? So eat what you want, but you can't put anything in a bag. You can't use your sickle, okay? You can't do that, just with your hand to the mouth. All right. So then Exodus 12:16, it's the other verse. This is what it says. On the first day, now the context is the Passover. This is the very beginning. This is what God's original instructions were to Moses and Aaron, the whole congregation of Israel, okay? So on the first day you shall hold a holy assembly, and on the 7th day a holy assembly. No work shall be done on those days, but, an exception, okay? But what everyone needs to eat, that alone may be prepared by you. Okay? So if you need to eat right there, you can prepare it on that day, and that's okay. That's okay. But you're not going to be opening your restaurant that day. Okay? That's the idea. Okay, so Jesus Christ, he knew the law. He knew the law really well. And in fact, when he's saying these things, the Pharisees knew it too, and he's reminding them. But the thing is they were not making good application. And they had their own rabbinic law. They added to the Bible. They added to it. And they were trying to put those things, their traditions, up to the same level of authority as the Holy Word of God. That's not good. Okay, so he knew that his disciples were not breaking the law. Jesus Christ, he knew his disciples were not breaking the law. To prove the ignorance and arrogance of the Pharisees, Jesus Christ brings up their hero, King David, who they would never speak against. Okay, Jesus reminds them of 1 Samuel 21. That's where the story is found, 1 Samuel 21. This is recording one of the many times that David was fleeing from King Saul's rampages out to get him, okay? So what does David do? He comes to the high priest, he lies, and then he eats the bread of the presence, also known as the holy bread. That doesn't seem okay. Let's read a little bit about it, all right? 1 Samuel 21, 1 through 4. Here we go. All right, I'll read it for you. You like it, don't you? You like it. Okay. Then David came to Nob. I would hate to live there, I guess. There's worse cities. Have you heard about there's some worse city names in America. But anyways, then David came to Nob, to Ahimelech, I always do that, the priest. And Ahimelech came to meet David, trembling, and said to him, "Why are you alone, and no one with you? Things aren't quite right here." And David said to Ahimelech the priest, "The king has charged me with a matter and said to me, let no one," so this is the lie here, "let no one know anything of the matter about which I send you and with which I have charged you. I have made an appointment with the young men for such and such a place." And then he's like, that's all I'm going to say because I'm going to trip up my words. He goes, "Now then, what do you have on hand?" He's like, to the point. I can't talk about it. It's all hush-hush, secret royal business. Don't worry about it. You're just a priest. You can't know about these things. Get out of here. "Oh, yeah. What kind of food do you have?" It's like, "Mom, what's in the fridge?" Okay. Yeah, so what do you have on hand? All right? So what did he say? "Give me," this is David, "give me 5 loaves of bread or whatever is here." He just was in such a rush, he wouldn't even count. He's just 5 loaves or whatever. They're all hungry. So he didn't want to stop at 5 loaves. He wanted more. I don't blame him. I love bread. There's nothing just warm, soft bread. I mean, there's not much better. I mean, you can add cheese, maybe some garlic. Okay, anyways, we're moving on. All right, a little hungry here. Okay, so then what do you have on hand? Give me 5 loaves or whatever. And the priest answered David, I have no common bread on hand, fresh out of that, but there is holy bread, if the young men have kept themselves from women. Okay? Now, we're not going to go into all that. I don't want this video to be like 2 hours long. We're not going to go into every little thing. Okay, if you have questions, you can ask in the comments below. Okay, here we go. Let's move on. So David would have arrived on the Sabbath, okay, which is why Jesus brings it up, right? That's why he brings it up when the Pharisees are talking about the disciples. David would have arrived on the Sabbath. On the Sabbath, the bread was 1 week old, and the high priest and his sons would eat the bread. And then they would replace it with fresh hot bread on that same day. The high priest graciously gave his portion and his son's portions to David and his men. That's really awesome, but only on that one condition, that they were holy, that they were, away from the women and stuff. So Jesus was not saying lying is okay. Don't let that be the takeaway. That's not what he was saying. Okay, Jesus is focusing on eating when you need to eat, even on the Sabbath. Okay, it's okay. The law provides for that. The Sabbath had clear laws, but the sole purpose of the laws of the Sabbath, we have to remember this, were to be a blessing and refreshment. That was the whole point of the Sabbath, to be a blessing and refreshment. This is the difference between the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. Okay, the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. The perspective of Mark, Gospel of Mark, on this story is told in Mark 2. So you have Matthew 12 and Mark 2. You can look at both those passages. Mark 2:27 includes Jesus saying, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. It's that idea. It was meant to be a blessing, a refreshment. That's the whole purpose of it. So we have examples of this kind of thing in our culture, the difference of letter of the law and spirit of the law, okay? So I made up a couple examples here, okay? I hope they're a little fun for you. In the library, okay, let's say you're in the library, the letter of the law is to quietly whisper, okay? That's the letter of the law. But now let's say there's, a fire in the library, all right? Now the letter of the law says you whisper. People are trying to read. They need to focus. They need to concentrate. They have their little water, and they're trying to focus on the reading. Why did I mention water? I don't know. But okay. But there's a fire. So then you may yell, "There's a fire! Everyone out of the building!" You don't want to make everyone panic, but you need to get them out, right? So you may break the letter of the law because the spirit of the law is to help them, all right? So even as important as it is to whisper in the library to help someone that's reading, it becomes more important to alert them to the fire, doesn't it? All right? So it's kind of the same thing. Letter of the law, spirit of the law. Here's one more example. Speed limit. Let's take the speed limit, for example. The letter of the law clearly expresses a maximum speed on the road, okay? You cannot go over this maximum speed. But let's just pretend here that there's a man that has a wife that is pregnant and in active labor. He gets her in the car. He takes off. Police officers will give some lenience here when you're going over the speed limit to try to make sure your wife does not deliver in the vehicle, okay, but in a hospital. That's an acceptable thing. All right, so that's like I always remember my firstborn. So when my wife was pregnant with my firstborn, and it came time, it was like probably 11 something at night. Lived in a small town. It was late. We get out there, nobody's on the road, and I was like, figures. This is my one time. But then I just looked at her and I said, hey, this is my one time that I can fly down this road. And so I spread my wings. We'll just say that. The bread David, now let's get away from that. Okay, the bread David ate by the letter of the law should not have been eaten by him and his men. However, by the spirit of the law, they were allowed. The disciples did not even break the letter of the law. Big difference. Remember the original contrast here, okay? The disciples versus David's men, okay? That's the contrast. So if the Pharisees are going to excuse David on all of this, you better let the disciples go. Just let them have a free pass here. And then, of course, what I've already shown you is they really didn't break the Sabbath at all. David actually did some bad stuff. These disciples are not doing bad stuff right now. Okay, so let's move on. Matthew 12, verse 5, brings up the second defense. So that was the first defense, make sure I'm saying that right. This is now the second defense Jesus provides for his disciples here. He's really sticking up for them. It's really cool. It's like the bully comes up on the playground, and then the older brother shows up, and he's like, hey, you ain't doing this. Or I don't know, however that goes. Verse 5, let's read it. Or have you not read in the law how on the Sabbath the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are guiltless? Now, do the priests actually profane the temple? Okay, there has been some bad priests throughout the history of Israel, right? But that Jesus is just using some hyperbole here. Okay, he's just saying, look, are they actually profaning the Sabbath? No, they're not profaning the Sabbath. All right, they're not. So, do you remember the previous video? Okay, part 1. I told you that I would show you how someone could legitimately bear the burden of work on the Sabbath and not be sinning. Well, here it is. This is what I was referring to. Okay, all right. So the priests. How could the Pharisees forget? Every single Sabbath, the priests could not even sit because of the amount of work that they needed to do. All the sacrifices and other duties of the priests were unarguably work. They were definitely work. Yet they did not sin in doing these duties. It was commanded by God. Okay? So now let's finish out this paragraph in Matthew 12. As Jesus Christ used this moment to teach about who he is, as Jesus often does. He teaches about the kingdom or himself, or, when he has these little moments with people. Okay, so we're looking at verses 6 through 8. I tell you, something greater than the temple is here. And if you had known what this means, and he quotes, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless, for the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. So here, Jesus proclaims himself to be greater than the temple. Once again, he is claiming to be God. What else could be greater than the temple? God alone is greater. Remember, that's where God's presence was, is in the temple. That's where a lot of holy things happened, and awesome symbolism of what Jesus Christ would do one day and things like that. And so, greater than the temple? What? That would be blasphemy, except that Jesus is God. And so, of course, it's not. All right. That's a pretty big deal. So what's he saying here? He's saying, hey, you need to recognize who it is you're actually trying to correct. Yeah, recognize who you're talking to here, God himself. Jesus Christ plainly asserts further ignorance on the part of the Pharisees as he quotes Hosea 6:6. That was where it says, I desire mercy and not sacrifice. Now, there's going to seem like you're not going to see that word mercy. You're going to see the word steadfast love. And I'll explain that in a moment. So just I want you to catch it, okay? So here we go. We're actually going to read a little more than that. That's Hosea 6:6 that he's quoting, but we're going to read Hosea 6:4 through 7, just to give a little more context. And you can see the power of the punch, the verbal punch, all right? Okay, here it is. Hosea 6:4 through 7. What shall I do with you, O Ephraim? What shall I do with you, O Judah? Your love is like a morning cloud, like the dew that goes early away. Therefore, I have hewn them by the prophets. I have slain them by the words of my mouth, and my judgment goes forth as the light. And here it is. This is the big one. For I desire steadfast love. That's that mercy in the New Testament, okay? I desire steadfast love and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings. But like Adam, they transgressed the covenant. There they dealt faithlessly with me. Okay? Now, before I get to the crux of the matter, just a quick footnote, which I'm not going to go super deep into, but a quick footnote. That word Adam there says, but like Adam, they transgressed the covenant. There they dealt faithlessly with me. Okay? Hebrew word Adam, you'll never guess what it is. It's Adam. Okay? Yes. All right. And so it primarily means either ground or man. So I'm going to favor the word man here. And when I say man, it could be a single person, or it could refer to mankind in general. And that's what I'm going to favor here, mankind in general. So I think that would be a better translation, which goes against, I'm taking a minority view here. A lot of translations would say Adam. but the King James, New King James, that whole trajectory there, it does say man, and I think that's better actually. Even though I'm a big ESV fan, but I got to jump ship here a little bit. Okay. So you can mention something in the comments about that if you're curious more about it, or if you have an argument. But there's enough information there that'd be like a whole other video. So I'm not gonna go there right now. Okay. So let's move on from that though. More importantly, is the Hebrew word behind steadfast love. So I'll read that 6:6 again. For I desire steadfast love and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings. Okay, that word steadfast love, the Hebrew word chesed. You have that that kind of sound there, chesed, right? Okay, it's difficult to translate in English. It's also very difficult for an English speaker to say, right? Okay, you get used to it after a while. But mercy is a big part of that Hebrew word, but like I said, it's difficult to translate. So it's also carrying the idea of love and covenant faithfulness, all these things kind of put together. And so the ESV in particular, every time it has that word, it translates it steadfast love. So if you were to read that translation, and every time you come across the word steadfast love, you can think about this little lesson here, and that's the word there. Okay. So mercy, really cool. This is the attribute that God actually speaks of himself the most. So when God speaks of himself, the number one attribute he mentions is mercy. God loves to show mercy. And this is completely within what we're talking about when Jesus is talking to the Pharisees here. He's showing them the reality of their hearts. See, the Pharisees, they love to accuse and condemn. The word Satan means accuser. The word devil means adversary. The unbelieving Pharisees were just like their father, the devil. So then Jesus proclaims in verse 8, which we already read, but for the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. Here he delivers the final verbal punch. He is God. He alone judges man's heart and the obedience of their soul. I'm reminded of Jeremiah 17:9 and 10. It says, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it? Then the answer comes. I, the Lord, search the heart and test the mind, to give every man according to his ways, according to the fruit of his deeds. So, quickly here, we can see easily that Jesus did not break the Sabbath in the following verses either, okay? With the information from part 1, so you did watch that, right? Okay, so from the information in part 1, you can figure this one out. So essentially, Jesus points out that if they are willing to work to save the life of their animal, then they should be able to see the value in saving a person. Because as wonderful as all life is, and as precious as animals are, we should take care of them, be kind to them, human life is more valuable. Human life is more valuable. Why? Primarily because man bears the image of God. Man has a soul. Now, you may argue with me of that. That's another comment thing if you'd like to. Okay. All right, here we go. Matthew 12:9-14, the rest of it. He went on from there and entered their synagogue, and a man was there with a withered hand. And they asked him, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? Now, they've already been through all this, right? But they're trying to show him up. It says in the Bible, so that they might accuse him. That's the whole purpose. Remember, accuser. That's what the word Satan means. He said to them, which one of you who has a sheep, if it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will not take hold of it and lift it out? You would save an animal's life, right? Of how much more value is a man than a sheep? So it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. That's a lawful thing to do, is good. Then he said to the man, stretch out your hand. And the man stretched it out, and it was restored, healthy like the other. But the Pharisees went out and conspired against him how to destroy him. There it is. Did Jesus break the Sabbath? No, he did not in none of those occasions. If you'd like to find another moment where he is accused of that and you have questions about it, please put it in the comments. I'll help you out with that. Okay, so hey, please support me with your prayers. I got a lot going on with Brains of Bibles. I'm trying to lift it off the ground, trying to get theology out there to everybody in the best way possible. So I do need your prayer. I need God to support me. I would also like your subscription to this channel here, Brains and Bibles. With your viewership and your donation and all those things, you can support me as well. I would love for you to take part in providing a high-quality theology to people around the world. I would love to have more to offer you. However, just funding kind of gets in the way, and well, time too. But right now, the big thing I think is funding. So please send me a donation. Electronic giving is on the way, right? But let me give you the address again. Address checks to Brains of Bibles. The address is Ankeny Baptist Church, 2842 Southwest 3rd Street Place. 2842 Southwest 3rd Street Place, Ankeny, Iowa, 50023. Address those checks to Brains and Bibles. Thank you again for watching. I really, really appreciate you. I love all you budding theologians out there. This is Joel Willoughby, the Brains and Bibles, signing off once again.